Peoples have something to say. And peoples can really only say what they have to say when they have a state that's the platform for it. What do you do when they get one of your kids, and his name happens to be Gilad Shalit? Do you trade 1,000 people for one kid? Of course you don't. Do you trade 100? Of course you don't. Until your 16-year-old son turns to you, and the you is me, and you're in the kitchen slicing whatever you're slicing, making dinner, and he says, this was a couple of years ago already, think we'll ever get Gilad Shalit out? And you know that he's not asking about Gilad Shalit. You know that he's saying to you, in 2 years, I'm going in. And if it happened to me, would you get me out? And then you try not to cry. And you try not to look at him because you know if you do, you will. And you say to him, not entirely truthfully, I'm positive we're going to get him out. And then you do get him out. And you think that it's absolutely the right thing to do, and so it's 1,000 people, who cares? We'll collect more of them, unfortunately. And then you watch on television the parents of the kids who died in the bombings, and watch as the murderer is embraced in Ramallah with people holding up victory signs, and you watch those parents now being the ones who are sobbing. And you know that you've spent too high a price. Or you haven't. And when an Israeli, I was going to say talk show radio, but that's not really right, shout show radio, when somebody calls up and says, Pidyon Shvuyim, the redemption of captives, is the ultimate value, there's nothing to discuss here, you get that boy home. And then somebody else calls up and says, not, I wonder if you've considered the following possibility, but says, you Ama Aretz Mid'oraita, right? I mean, you boor, with a capital B. Don't you know what happened to Rabbi Meir of Rottenburg? The great sage of the Middle Ages who was captured by Christians, who refused to be ransomed because he says if you do it, they'll take somebody else and they'll empty the coffers of the Jewish community. There is precedent for not ransoming people at too high a price. And which one represents the Jewish value? They both do. Who represents the needs of the Jewish state? The ones who say, don't let the Sudanese in, because how many more Muslims that we can't take care of are we going to let in here? And those who say, how do you say no to strangers in the land of Egypt? They're both right. But Rousseau was also right. The only place where Jews have an opinion about this, where it really truly matters, is when they control the borders. And it's when they're soldiers who make the decisions. And it's their policemen. And it's their tax laws. And it's their demographic needs. Not to suggest by any stretch of the imagination that Jewish life can exist meaningfully only in Israel. That is ridiculous. Jewish life can exist meaningfully all over the world, but it is a different kind of Jewish life, not better, not worse, just different. And it impacts Jews all over the world. And I therefore want to suggest to you that the Jews play a role, or Israel, the state of Israel plays a role for the Jews and for the world, in which I'll wrap up. It plays a role for the Jews, as we said, because it restores us to the category of a people. With its own country and its own language and its own history, we're real. We're not Chechens, Tibetans, and Basques who want to be real, but we're like Italians, Germans, and French, and so on and so forth, who in a certain way are real. That's what it does for us. But we have something to say to the rest of the world also, which is that countries, in addition to being harbors for citizens, can also be harbors for peoples. And they can be the platforms and the microphones and the speakers through which peoples say something to the world about their values, about what their language has to say, about what their history has to say, about what the traditional texts have to say, about what their religion has to say. And if we lose that, if we become one homogenized whole, we will lose the grandeur of human life, and we will lose the reason for human freedom. And if the world cannot abide the Jewish state, the world will not be able at the end of the day to abide human difference anywhere. And if the world can't abide human difference, the world will lose the concept of freedom as we know it, which restores Israel really to its ancient prophetic role, saying something to the rest of the world that it doesn't want to hear, but that is ultimately true. It was once monotheism, then it was Isaiah and Jeremiah and Amos and so on and so forth, talking about a just society, and now it's about the importance of human difference.